This is Zane and the Hurricane, and we are reading Chapter 16, Smoke on the Water. An hour or so later, I'm still a little shaky inside, like there's a cold place where the snake has slithered into my brain and won't go away. Very unusual, Mr. Tru says about the incident. Big mess of cottonmouths all up together. Must be the flood drove them crazy. Never seen such a thing before. Likely won't ever see it again. He's trying his best to reassure me, saying how rare it is for a snake to come into a boat. But if it can happen once, it can happen again, right? And next time, he might not be so quick with his paddle. So I keep seeing wrinkles in the water and tensing up. And he keeps on paddling slow and steady. We pass away from the drowned neighborhood into a wide place with a couple of big wrecked barges laying half submerged. The shipping channel, he says, and on the other side of the shipping channel, the flood only comes up to the lower windows of the houses instead of the roofs. Mr. Tru says that the water is no more than 3 or 4 feet deep and could get us out and walk the canoe along if he had to, but me and Melvina beg him not to. And that's when I realize that despite all the joking around, she's just as scared of snakes as me. Stay in the boat, Tru, she pleads. Stay in the boat. He promises he won't get out until the canoe bumps into dry ground. Come to that, it don't have to be exactly dry, he adds, musing. Soggy will do. How long we get there, Melvina wants to know. Long as it takes, but I expect this day end and we find a good place. Maybe we would have to, if it isn't for the small amount of cookouts. Sorry guys, let me try that again. Maybe we would have to, too, if it wasn't for the smell of a cookout, which comes along about an hour later. Bandy sniffs at first, lifting his head and making hopeful little whines in the back of his throat. Then we all nod pretty much at the same time, and Melvina goes, "Smell that? Somebody grilling." "Uh-huh. You can see where it at," Mr. Tru says, pointing with his paddle. Thin white smoke rises behind a brick school building. The school is on high enough ground that there's only a few inches of water pooled around it. I'm 1,000 miles from home, but somehow it seems so familiar that it could be my own school, right down to the old signpost by the main entrance that says all visitors must sign in at the main office. Mr. Tru paddles over, nudging the canoe up to the front steps. That's the first time I notice his foot hurts, because as he gets out of the canoe, he grabs his leg and grimaces in pain. "Tru!" Melvina cries. "Ain't nothing, darling. Sore foot is all. Bumped it a little when the flood came." He takes a deep breath, forces a smile. "You wait here while I check it out." He limps through the door into the school. So we sit there waiting, smelling that hungry smell. Pretty soon my stomach starts growling, and it growls so loud and so long that Bandy perks up his ears as if he thinks there's another dog somewhere nearby. Melvina gets to giggling, and I can't stop. "You real funny, you know that?" she says. "Sounds like you got a Lion King in your tummy." It is pretty funny if you think about it, how your body makes noises whether you want it to or not. Some of them way worse than a stomach growls. So I get to laughing too, and Bandy joins in with a couple of happy yips. We're still laughing when Mr. Tru limps out of the school. "You ain't gonna believe this," he says. Inside, the school smells kind of moldy and damp, but that's only like the bottom layer of all the smells. The top smell, the cooking smell, gets stronger and stronger as we move towards daylight at the end of the dark hallway. The fire doors have been propped open to a paved area behind the school, with an old rusty basketball hoop at one end. On the pavement, lined up like cars revving at a stop sign, are 3 gas cookout grills with delicious smelling smoke pouring out from under the covers, and a bunch of folks crowded around with big smiles on their faces. These are the first happy faces I've seen before the hurricane, and all those smiles make me want to smile too. My mom always says a smile is easier to catch than a cold. As usual, she's right. Somebody has turned off their mic. Go ahead and turn it back off, please. Mr. Tru takes off his top hat and makes a little bow with makes a little bow with the crowd to the crowd. Thank y'all. Your hospitality much appreciated. The people gather around the grills don't seem the least bit closed off about a few more hungry strangers crashing their cookout. The more the merrier, they keep saying, handing us plates. What happens is they've been using a local elementary school as an unofficial shelter. Unofficial because the doors have been locked and they had to break into the highest and in the height of the flood when it was the only dry spot for miles around. With the power out, it made sense to empty the cafeteria freezers before the food thawed and spoiled, so they grilled up enough chicken wings and fish sticks for the whole neighborhood, and those that stayed behind, those that couldn't evacuate or chose not to, and managed to survive the wind and the rain and the rising waters. Mr. Tru asks if he can make a few calls, but the phones are dead here too. Cell towers are blown out like everything else, one of the men explains. On the radio, it said they got some landlines still good in Gitna and would get some cell reception out to Jefferson, but who knows? Most of the city flooded. That's what they say. Gently, Metternich, Ninth Ward, St. Bernard's Parish, all underwater. Mr. Tru nods to himself as if to confirm what he has suspected. Levees failed. He says, nobody did nothing to fix them old levees. They mostly nothing but dirt, and they finally failed. Yeah, brah, they fail. We in the flood now. Police? Ain't seen no police. Ain't seen no National Guard. Ain't seen no Red Cross. Nuh-uh, we on our own. Melvina gets real quiet in the company of all these adults, barely parting with her name when asked, and I realize she's pretty shy around strangers, which is kind of a surprise, considering how talkative she's been around me and Mr. Tru. But even so, she's not so shy that she won't dig into a plate heaped with grilled chicken wings, quietly urging me to do the same. Better feed that lion, boy, she whispers. Bandy's having a good time, too. He doesn't stray far from my side, but people keep coming over and feeding him little scraps and saying that he's a good dog, what a good dog he is, which makes him shiver with pleasure. After a while, I kind of get that talking about my dog is an excuse for people to check me out, probably wondering what a light-skinned New Hampshire boy doing in this particular neighborhood with these particular people, although they're too polite to ask directly. Mr. Tru mentions about my great-grandmother and how Gerald Dupree was my father, but nobody around here seems to know them. And the local folk sort of pull back, not wanting to push the subject, which is fine with me. Finally, Melvina leans over, speaking low. Maybe you an alien dude from outer space. Got the ears for it, like Mr. Spock. My hands automatically check my ears, which are mostly under my hat, and then I realize she's laughing softly, her sparkling eyes full of mischief. Got me, I say, dropping my hands. Oh, you easy, she says, giving me a little bump with her skinny shoulder. Thinking about it later, after all that bad stuff went down, and the good stuff too, that's the moment that when me and Melvina started to be true friends, sitting there eating our fill and joking around like we'd known each other for years. I even ate some fish sticks, which I normally hate, because she says New Orleans style fish sticks are really good as long as you got some dipping sauce, and they did, in little plastic packets like from McDonald's, only way better. We eat until we can't swallow another bite. I'm starting to feel pretty good about everything. Like, now that it's all over, the scary stuff that happened was just really part of an exciting story I can tell my friends, and soon the phones will start working and I can call my mom and tell her to come get me, and everything will be fine. That part, the feeling good part, ends when the fearsome-looking dude with the designer shades and thick gold chains slides up to us and goes, well, now, this is a surprise, Melvina Rollins, as I live and breathe. Too bad about your mama. Melvina looks at him like the way she looked at the snakes that slipped out of our canoe.